Welcome back everyone. Today we're going to be breaking down and reviewing the best Volibear player in the world at the moment. Now I've played against this guy quite a few times now, and he is without a doubt the best Volibear player that I've ever seen, so we're going to be going through how exactly he plays so much better than the average Volibear player. Now this video is going to be halfway between a guide and a review, so I'm going to be going through in detail his runes, itemization, even what he skills in certain matchups to give himself that edge, and of course the gameplay. So if that sounds good to you, then let's get started. Starting off with the runes. Now, most of the time he does opt into one of these two pages, depending on his matchup, where he'll go Grasp of the Undying into pretty much any melee champion he plays against. So if he versus a champion like Cassante, Renekton, champ like Mbissa, he'll run Grasp to give him really strong short trades. But if he versus a champion he can't short trade against, like a Kennen, or a Gnar, or an Aurora, he'll run PTA so that when he does finally get onto his opponent, if he flashes onto them or reaches them with a few points in Q, he'll get a really strong all-in trade against them. Now, in the secondary runes, he runs pretty much the same thing every game, with Shield Bash, Second Wind, and Revitalize, and Alacrity, but he does decide between Cut Down or Last Stand, depending on his matchup, where if he versus a champion that can harass him and poke him down, get him low HP, he will run Last Stand, which is why he runs it every game against ranged champions, so that if you time your all-in when you're low HP, up against a champion like Nara, if you flash onto them when you're low, you'll get a lot of value from Last Stand, and the rest of the runes, Alacrity and Triumph with Shield Bash Revitalized every single game. You'll notice regardless of the page, he has Revitalized because getting that extra healing from W, extra shielding from E, really valuable on this champion, and Shield Bash giving you a lot of burst when you finally do flash onto or even reach them with Q and get that really strong all-in trade against your opponent. Now, other than the grasp into melee, PTA into range matchup rule that he normally follows, there are some scenarios where he does run Pressy attack into some volatile melee lanes. So if he versus a champion like Aatrox or a champion like Gwen, he'll run PTA so that he can force all-ins against them and shut them down early game, as those champions will start to dominate him in the later point of the lane. If he can't get an early advantage, he'll run PTA so that he can force a stronger all-in up against those champions, especially they're a lot weaker than him early game, so he doesn't really need the early trading power from Grasp as much, so he'll run PTA into matchups of that nature. Moving on to his summoner spells. Now, most of the Volibear players that I see, they do take Ignite most of the time, but he's actually the opposite. He runs TP and Flash in the majority of his matchups, but he will run Ignite into very specific volatile matchups that have a lot of healing. So if he versus champions like Aatrox, Darius, Olaf, like I have listed there, he will run Ignite so that he can actually win the all-in against them, shut them down early, and if they try to all-in him back, he's got the Ignite to cut down their huge amounts of healing. Moving on to his item builds. Now, regardless of this guy's matchup, it doesn't matter if he's versus Aurora or Cassiopeia or Teemo, he'll never go Doran's Shield, always Doran's Ring no matter what, for that extra trading power and shielding. Now, for his first buy, if he's a bit broke, if he bases on 500, 600, something like that, he will go Dark Seal and Refillable, but if he ever bases with enough for Tier 2 boots, especially for cooldown boots, 900 gold, he will go that as his first item so that he can actually reach his opponent and flash cooldown extremely broken on this champion. Now, he doesn't go them every game. Of course, if he versus Quinn top Graves jungle, something crazy, he will go Tabbies. And if he versus a huge amount of CC, so Lissandra mid, Leona, Sejuani, way too much CC to the point where Merc trades are broken, especially if he versus one top like a Gragas, he will go Merc trades, but a lot of the time, if he does just base on 900, he will pick up those cooldown boots. Now, for his first item, hopefully this opens a lot of eyes for people. I never want to see Rod of Ages Volibear ever again. That item is horrible on this champion. Cosmic Drive is your AP item of choice. So if you ever verse a ranged champion, especially, the added mobility from this item feels really strong on him, especially with a few points in Q. We'll talk more on that later. But Cosmic Drive is the go-to first item on Volibear. So powerful in matchups where you need the extra damage and mobility. So champs like Olaf, champs like Darius, feels really good into them. Any range champion, of course, and even into an AP champion like Rumble, this is a great first item to go. Now, Unending Despair is his armor item of choice, so if you verse AD top jungle, so Viego J, something like that, you can just go into Unending Despair. The Drain Tank build is pretty OP at the moment on a lot of champions, and Volibear is no exception, so Unending Despair with a Spirit Visage as your second or third item, depending on the game, can feel really good and make you really strong at a 2-item spike. But if you do go the Cosmic Drive first, you can go Despair or Visage second, so if they have a really heavy AP team, so if they have Karthus jungle, AP mid, something like that, you can just go Visage second, but most of the time, your go-to build will be Cosmic into Despair, or vice versa. Now, as for the rest of his build, I'd say the most important part is your first 3 items. Cosmic Drive, Despair, and Visage, depending on the order, is going to be the most broken point of Volibear, 1, 2, 3 items. After that, you do start to fall off a bit, and you normally just build tanky items. So items like Randuins into multiple crit chance champions, so if they have a Yasuo, maybe Visa Yone top with a normal 80 carry, Randuins will be great, or Frozen Heart into heavy auto attackers, so if they have Zinzal, Jarvan, something like that, AD top especially, Frozen Heart can be your armor item of choice, but you can go Zhonya's and just sit on the Seekers until you use it into matchups where you want to be buying a lot of time, especially if they have a lot of burst, like a Talon or a Kiana, or a really big ability you can Zhonya's, like a Kalphas ulti. Seeker's Arm Guard can be a great buy, especially if you just buy it before a big Baron or Elder fight, something like that. It would be a really good pickup for you. Now, you probably spotted Quick Blades, and Quick Blades is the most fun item on Volibear, but don't get baited too much. This item is strictly for if you're snowballing extremely hard. This is an item you need to be really fed on it, because if you're squishy with this item, you're going to be a complete shit stain. So you need to be so strong and ahead of the curve, maybe up 2k gold, 3k gold of your opponent, to the point where you're pretty much getting an extra item for free because you're so far ahead. In that case, this can be a really good item, especially up against heavy melee comps, where if they have a lot of melee champs that are running towards you, and you have Cosmic Drive, Unending Despair, you're already really tanky, you don't really need MR that badly, you can go Quick Blades, especially after Visage as well. Can be a really great pickup as a 4th item if you feel like, oh, Randuin's Frozen Heart don't really need more armor this game, don't really need more MR. You can pick up then a very Quick Blades, and then rounding off your build with a Juxtra the Protein, especially if you already have an armor and MR item, is going to be the way to go. Just be careful, don't get baited by Quick Blades too much, even though it's very, very fun. You need to be very far ahead to make this item valuable. Now, one extra thing I wanted to cover before we move on to his laning phase is the way he maxes his abilities, depending on the matchup. Where most Volibear players that I watch, they just max W no matter what, he actually goes 4 points in Q into certain lanes, especially range matchups. So you can see here he's up against a Nah, and he went into 4 points in Q, never 5 for some reason. He probably feels like the 24% movement speed is enough, doesn't really need that extra point. So 4 points into Q into W max. He did go the 5th point Q here, but most of the time, if we check the other Nah game, he does just go 4 points in Q into W max into that final point in Q before rounding off with E. And of course, into melee matchups like a Cassante or a Darius, where the extra bite damage is going to be very significant, and he's going to be able to reach them very easily. They have to walk up to farm, just straight 5 points in W for the most part. But there are some matchups where they are melee, but he doesn't max W right away. And we'll see here, so a couple of examples up against a Garen, where he's going to win the extended fight against Garen anyway. He doesn't really need that extra damage and healing from extra points in W that'll give him. He prefers the ability to able to reach and hard punish this weak early game champion that he'll beat in an extended fight anyway. So you can see up against a Garen, he went 4 points in Q. And if we check again into Aatrox, another champion that he wins against a long trade, 4 points in Q. But if we see a melee champion that has a strong wall in, like a Darius here, he's going to go straight 5 points into W. So you can see it's not just ranged champions that he'll do 4 points into Q and 2. It's champions that can actually fight him back in the long trade, like a Darius or a Set. He'll go 5 points W or a Cassante. But if he versus a weak melee champion, like a Garen or an Aatrox, he just goes 4 points in Q anyway so that he can force trades onto them more often. Moving on to the laning phase. Now, this is the most important part about Volibear, in my opinion, and I wanted to start with this matchup because not only is he up against a Garen, a really popular champion that you're probably going to face in your game, he's playing up against Goblin King, the #1 ranked Garen player on the Korean ladder, and my favorite Garen player to watch. So we can see how exactly he gains an advantage up against the best player on the really common champion. So straight away stacking Grasp and passive on the wave, no surprises there. One thing he does differently than a lot of Volibear players is instead of starting E and trying to go for a no-scope E or E from the bush, he actually starts Q up against champions like Garen and champs like Aatrox that don't have a lot of room to fight him back. But if he plays up against a champ like Darius or a Cassante that is contesting him level 1, maybe a Set, he will start E as you will get a lot of value from the shield if your opponent can actually fight you back, but Garen doesn't really have the room to do so. So he's going to start Q and just force a quick trade with his Grasp. Now, if you do start Q on Volibear, it's important that you get your Q down relatively quickly, like you did here, so that by the time you get level 2, you have your second Q available, and that's exactly what he does here. Now, good on Goblin King, he matches level 2 and skills W instantly to W the Volibear Q, so he's able to block a lot of that CC, but he still gets the QE onto him as he plays the E really well. He knows Garen's probably going to do this, he's probably played up against him a few times, so he places his E quite far away. Really common against any champ, to be honest, but really good up against Garen as he does have a lot of tenacity from that W. Now you'll notice he tried really hard to crash wave 2, which you should be looking to do on Volibear quite frequently. Not only so you can go get a jungle ward, like he does here, but you're going to be pushing too quickly anyway with your passive, and you want your passive up to take really big trades like we see here. So if you are utilizing your Volibear passive and pushing that quickly, just make sure you crash wave 2 really fast as you possibly can. Couple of reasons to that. You don't want the wave to be awkwardly stuck here if you push it too slowly, but also you want the wave to bounce back. So you can see here, he pushed the wave so quickly that the wave barely touched wave 3, which means wave 3 is not going to be slow pushing from here. It's going to go straight back to the center. So not only has he gotten great trades and a jungle ward, so in some games he might attack the jungler, he's got wave 3 to reset back to even. So now he has a lot of room to chase his opponent down the lane. But good on Goblin King trying to get level 3 before him, exactly what he does here, and goes for a trade level 3 versus 2. But he goes for the stun and disengages, spacing out the Garen Q here. So well played by both parts so far. So now he's going to be looking to contest on his next set of cooldowns and trying to just get his Volibear passive stacked up again and forcing a trade if Garen goes in. So you'll notice here, he buffered W through the Garen Q. So you should be looking to do that through any type of CC, get your W animation started, so you can see W through. So now he's got W1, the stack of W on the Garen, so if you can force a trade, like we see here, E into flash Q, auto W gets the second bite, and trading flashes with the Garen. So he didn't end up getting the second bite, because Garen had to flash before getting bitten, or he'd be 1 HP, but now he's in a position where his opponent has no TP. They're both low HP, but that's going to benefit Volibear, of course, so much burst. So we'll see how he plays the dive, approaching, and it's going to be pretty straightforward. You notice here, before he went for the dive as well, he kept his Volibear stacks up on the tower just before they expired. He hit the tower once to keep 5 out of 5 stacks, so I'd say almost a perfectly played early game from our Volibear player here, and leads the trade with EQ, auto W, and clicking away, 1 extra auto, and a perfect early game in this matchup. Moving on to a stronger early game champion, this game he's playing up against a Riven. And you'll see very shortly, even though he's playing up against a Riven compared to a Garen, much stronger early champion, his playstyle is very, very similar. He's got a pretty consistent pattern that he follows in the majority of his matchups, but that's because it works. So you'll see very surely, it works even up against a Riven, Q start, forcing a grasp trade, but of course he has to disengage a lot more. Up against a Riven, doesn't want an extended trade up against her. So back to hitting the wave, trying to go for that 2-wave crash yet again, and every time his Q's up, he'll go for a grass trade whenever he can. He doesn't want to force it here if he's 1 minion off level 2 though. He's going to wait for level 2 so that he can get the QE, of course a lot stronger than just a Q. But Riven knows he's going to be respecting, so he decides to just hard push wave 2. Forces in, he let that 1 minion die first before he got it in, and going to check the jungler. Now you notice here he doesn't choose to ward, because he sees if golems are gone, that means Viego did red golems raptors, so he doesn't even need to ward for it in this game. So straight back to top. Knows exactly where the jungler is, and back to playing out the matchup. So you can see when the wave comes back to him, his opponent will get level 3 first, which is why he put the shield down beforehand, so that he can prepare for that trade and match the level 3 as well. So he's going to be looking just to stack waves together and push. He doesn't really let the wave come back here, because you can't do that if you're looking to maintain stacks on Volibear, which he does for the majority of his matchup. He's just going to be looking to force trades whenever he can. So you can see guarding the cannon. If you touch this cannon, I'm going to trade onto you, making it really painful for Riven to walk up. But every top lane that you know, they want to get that cannon. So he goes for the early W. A lot of times when he trades, he'll walk up and not go for the QE straight away. He'll just go for a little bite, so that when he does go for the QE trade, if you touch this cannon, he's going to have a potential W2 to use. But Riven baits it out, she fakes going for it and just lets the cannon die, so she's already struggling in this matchup. So hard shoves the wave, gets it under tower. You'll notice a lot of the time where he crashes a wave, he doesn't crash it with the enemy wave being like here or anything like that. He crashes it with enough time, so that the wave will mostly die by the time the next wave arrives, and come back to relatively the center of the lane. So really important on the wave that you are crashing on Volibear, that you crash it as quickly as you can, so that you can have the wave back in the center, but you don't have to let the wave come all the way back in and risk not having your stacks up. So we'll review this trade as well. We can see it lets the wave settle, goes for the bite yet again, buffers the bite through Riven W, so that she has a stack of Frenzied Maul onto him, and that when he does go for this trade, he can get a W2. So we'll see here as well, he doesn't actually slam the Q onto her. You can get multiple Qs, so for those of you who don't know, if you get CC'd out of your Q, it will stop it, but the cooldown will be refreshed. So we can see here, Q's onto it, doesn't hit her straight away, waits for the Q3 to reset the Q animation, so he can really milk the amount of movement speed he's getting from that spell, and making sure he stays onto it to get W2. Then he holds onto it a little bit longer, waiting for W to be up, chucks the E down. So Riven did well to anticipate where the E was going to be and space out of it, but the Volibear player did really well holding onto his Q that whole time. So chases her down here, almost gets the flash, but Riven just eats away. I'm surprised he didn't go for the flash bite there. He probably assumed, or really likely he assumed she was going to flash, because she was on flash W off death. So you can see he pretended he was going to flash by clicking forward like that, pretending he was going to flash W, but it's just mind games on mind games. He thinks that she's going to flash away, and she knows he's going to hold, so they just both hold it. So pretty interesting there. The two challenger players just staring at each other, but of course if you're up against a worse player, you could just flash kill them there, then forcing his Waven into a recall. Now, he didn't have 900, so we won't see the Lucidity boots. He had around 850, so Dark Seal Ruby, Pink Potion, so just spending as much gold as he can. So he comes back straight away at level 5, and again, goes for this little trade with the bite, gets the stack of Frenzied Maul onto her before he goes for his round 2. You don't want to blow QWER, or QEW, and only be able to get one stack of W. You want to go for the little bite, and then your second trade will be a W2, or they have to hard respect and not allow you to get that. So she goes up for some farm, goes for the W yet again, still holding his Q and E. You can see a very consistent pattern here. So now just hard pushing this wave, trying to get under tower, and this is where he starts to poke under tower. So you'll see 5 points into W because he's playing up against a champion that can actually fight him back. The Riven compared to the Garen, where against Garen he just wants to force a lot of trades with his Q. Against Garen he needs that ability, that extra combat power that W will give him. So we can see she goes to fight him under the tower and get the wave, goes for the EQW, clicks away, abuses the shield to block the tower shot. And now it's really surprising what he does next here, in my opinion. He just completely tower dives it. So one-shots this wave as fast as he can. And again, just leads with ulti instantly. Jumps on her head straight away, disables the tower, goes for a W1, goes for the EQ. She flashes out the stun, but it doesn't matter. Tower disabled, and he just completely ran her over there. So I would say the most impressive part about the laning, in my opinion, was not only the fact that he would go for W1 trades but not full combos, and then make it so she can't walk up to slowly bleed around, put pressure onto her, but also the way he was using his Q. I've never seen a Volibear do that type of thing where running against your opponent on purpose, holding onto your Q, waiting for them to CC you, so that you get a second round of Q up to keep you in range to hit that second W. And finishing off the laning section with a range matchup, this game playing up against a Nah. Now, I've played this matchup up against him twice, and the main thing I've noticed is he normally waits till level 5, level 6, 3 points in Q, before he makes his move and goes for that all-in, as 3 points in Q seems to be that sweet spot where you can actually run down and reach these range champions. So we'll see, level 1 he actually starts E not Q, because up against a good range top player, it's going to be really hard for you to hit Q level 1, but if you verse a bad one with bad spacing, a lot of the time you actually can. So starts E, displays for push, and blocking the Nah damage with the shield, of course, but he is going to be still trying to abuse his level 2, like he does every game, and keeping his stacks up for a 2-wave crash. At level 2, forces straight away, so Nah made a spacing mistake there, and Nah started Q instead of E, so you can get a big trade onto him. So really nice trade there, pushes in wave 2, and again, you can see the pattern by now, goes to find the jungler before he gets ganked, so good deep ward there. And now the wave is coming back towards him. So now that Nah has level 3 and has his E, it's going to be really hard for Volibear to reach him. So he mainly plays for the wave. So you'll see, he's abusing his passive, trying to push the wave under tower. Nothing special there, so one shots the wave. He did think about going to harass this Vi, and if his jungle was topside, he almost certainly would, but because Viego is down there, and if we look at his vision, he's pretty weak-sided here, really deep on bot side, no chance he can get any help from mid or from jungle, so you can't really beat this level 4 Vi 1v1. I see Vi level 4 very surely, goes for the Gromp steal, but ultimately he hits pretty hard against a jungler, and now he's going to be playing for his level 5 spike, so you can see he did go for a trade here, and burn the Nah E, but he's mainly allowing this wave to come back in so that he can build a big wave on the bounce back. So we'll see chilling back here, letting the Nah push, just trying to get minions with his E. And then when the wave starts pushing out, that's when he's going to be looking to go around level 5 with 3 points in Q. So he gets his level 5, starts to push the wave out. But of course, Nah, a good range top player, is not going to be queued very easily, but we'll see how exactly he gains his advantage. So still pushing the wave, trying to get pro, trying to break his bone plating as well with the passive, and you can see how fast 3 points in Q really changes. The matchup now, Nah had to jump away, even though he started his Q from such a long distance away, here to here, he's still able to reach him, so burning the Nah E, and a lot of range champs, their main disengage spell will be a shorter cooldown. a longer cooldown, sorry, than Volibear. So you can see E 22 versus Q being at 12. So especially with 3 points in Q, the cooldown will be a lot lower and just hard pushes this way. So you get level 6 on the last minion of the 5-minute normal wave and instantly flashes. Nara is 85% HP here, but he flashes onto him, goes for the combo and just beats him down. So you don't really need the extra points in W up against squishy ranged champions. The points in Q, the extra mobility from the spell is more than enough and you can just completely one-shot them, even though he didn't have his ulti there. Moving on to team fighting. Now, team fighting is relatively straightforward on Volibear, I'd say, probably the easiest part of him. We just want to dive in and get stuck in with the boys and try to flash onto a priority target. But there's one thing I've noticed that he does really well in a team fight, and that is being very aware and maintaining his W stacks. Because especially late game, especially with this type of build, with Visage and some games Unending Despair, you're pretty much a drain tank in a late game fight. So if you can keep up your W stacks on a target, you'll see very surely how impactful it can be. So he goes and pops ulti on the tower, because his team got really hard shit on. He wanted to disable tower for them, so he goes for the jump. Thought about the tower, but changed his mind. Goes for the one shot onto Pyke, and then goes on to the priority target. So goes on to Kalista straight away, goes for a W1. Now you'll see here, instead of just trying to kill her right now with a Q, with an auto attack after this Q, he waits for his W2. He doesn't go for the auto, he waits for his W, goes to bite, and you can see he heals over 1000 HP at this point with Spirit Visage. So really making sure he doesn't just kill the target before he can get his W2 onto them. Very similar to a Darius, where you wouldn't want to kill somebody before you get 5 stacks, or kill them without ulting them to get your passive off. Same thing on Volibear here. He could just go for the Q auto right now, but waits and holds onto his W, gets the bite, and then kites into the bush, abusing his E as well. Goes for a W1 onto the Corki. Just sticks onto him, just beating up the backline. You can see very standard team fighting on Volibear. Nothing special apart from the way he's playing around his W. So playing it slowly, goes for the Q flash, holding onto flash the whole time. I'll say a hard part about Volibear team fighting would be discipline with your flash. It could be really tempting to flash on the first target. So if we go back to this fight, he had many opportunities to flash onto maybe Kalista or Corki, and we'll see. Goes for the ulti, and instead of just Q flashing onto Kalista here, where no one can follow him up, he Qs onto the target where his teammates can actually follow and get the kill onto Pyke. And then even here, doesn't need a flash, of course, just sticking onto the Kalista. And doesn't flash, not flashing this whole fight. I think it was really good discipline from him. Gets the W1, and then when Corki finally does try to disengage, he held his flash the whole time, so he can actually flash and punish him with his next rotation of Q. So I'd say really well played team fight from him. I'd say laning is the most important part of this champion, but if you do want to improve at your team fighting on volley, it's mainly around holding onto your spells, holding your ulti, holding your flash, waiting for the right time to strike, and making sure you are very aware of who your W is on so that you can get multiple bites off in a fight. Alright team, that's it for now. Hopefully I haven't made too many Warwick and Volibear players running around with the videos this week. So if there's another champion you'd like to see me cover, feel free to let me know down in the comments below. And I'll see what I can do, and I'll see you all next time.